could not really grasp onto the fact that that inner critic is not actually me. And the same thing goes with, like, if I'm nervous about something or whatever the discomfort or the intrusive thought is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow to Lead podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It can literally save you time and money. Friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation with my dear friend, Trey Tucker. Trey is a repeat offender here on the podcast, and today we talk about his newest book, Tough Enough. We have a powerful conversation about authentic leadership, emotional health, and the essential role of self-care in sustaining long-term influence. Look, if there's anything I've learned from coaching clients over and over again, is the optimized version of you is what's going to take you furthest, fastest. So Trey and I talk about all of that. We talk about how embracing imperfection allows leaders to build deeper trust and foster genuine relationships, lead with authenticity. You're going to love this dialogue. Trey is an absolute, just wise leader. And I know you're going to love him. If you do me a favor, pick up a copy of his book, follow him on Instagram, and let him know that you heard him here on the podcast. So now, here's a quick word from our partners. Then we'll jump into my conversation with Trey. And don't forget to stay all the way to the end for the coaching question for today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have one of my real life friends, Trey Tucker. Trey, thanks for coming back on the podcast.
Hey, somehow you let me back on. I don't know what I did or how I got in your good graces, but here I am somehow. I'll try not to mess this up too bad.
Glutton for punishment. No, don't say that. You're amazing. Listen, this year we are leaning into the 12 most Googled leadership questions. And every month we're wrestling with a new question as we figure out what it means to be a Christian leader. And so this month's question, the question for you is, what are the most important skills that a leader must have?
Bottom line, you got to be a dad. And I know that is not a typical skill set that a leader you would think of as a leader, but you have to have the fatherly instincts and the care for people to actually be their surrogate dad in the workforce or wherever it is that you're leading them. Because, I mean, you know this, I don't have to tell you, but nobody's really going to care how much you know or what direction you're trying to take them unless they actually get a sense that you care about them. And once they get that sense and they believe it's authentic, then I think they'll follow you anywhere. It's a miraculous thing when somebody actually sees you as, you don't have to use the word dad or father figure, but somebody who's a really concerned mentor that wants the best for you. It's almost miraculous what people will do.
I love that idea about leaning into care. Let me ask you this, as someone who does a lot of counseling, who mentors a lot of men especially, how do you begin to lean into what care looks like? Like, how do you know when it's like, okay, I need to give a little bit more of my heart? Because I can imagine there's a leader listening right now who's going, gosh, I'm spent. I don't know that I have any more room for empathy, right? Talk to us about the balance.
Yeah. You can't give what you haven't received. And so you got to make self-care and whatever that looks like for you. You have to make that such a priority that you are the well that other people might be able to drink from, at least temporarily. Obviously, you can't be their source of whatever it is that they need for the long run, but they need to be able to come to you and at least get a taste of what it is that you have. And if you're not doing your own work, whether that be time with God or just the physical self-care, any kind of mental, emotional work, not only will they see that, they'll get a sense that you're not really regulated, to use some therapy language, but also on the opposite of that, if you're filled up, man, they'll notice that. They might not even be able to put words to that, but they'll sense like, okay, he's calm, he's safe, he's confident. And then therefore, if you have it, and you got all of your to-do lists and all the pressure bearing down on you, but if you just see them as divine appointments when somebody walks up and interrupts you, because you might be surprised by it, but God certainly wasn't surprised by it. So and this is me just trying to tell myself this, because I'm definitely not good at it, but because there's always that part of me that's like, God, don't interrupt me. But then I have to remind myself that's just a part in me. That's not actually me. And so, God, what have you said? You've said, all right, this is something that you have divinely appointed. This person needs to be in my presence and therefore in your presence, because I'm just a conduit for God's presence. Those are the ways that I at least try to remind myself, and I'm far from perfect at it, but I at least try to rep it out.
One of the things that I appreciate about you is that humble posture, and I've seen it time and time again. In your newest book, Tough Enough, one of the chapters that you have is on the idea of your father or father figure isn't perfect. And as I was taking a look at that, it resonates from a couple perspectives. One, because I know that about my dad, who I love dearly and who will really admit. But two, it's hard for me as a dad and as a disciple maker, as somebody who leans in and coaches, to be like, I know that I'm not perfect, but why is it so hard for me to grasp? Why is it so hard for us to grasp our imperfections?
Goodness. You want to do a seminary theological paper on this one? Why is it so hard to grasp our imperfections? Is that the idea we're going at?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, it feels like we all accept the fact that we're not perfect, but just like what you just did there, it's so hard to live with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I've even thought about it enough and in depth enough to give a great answer here. I'm just thinking in my own experience alone, I'm much more comfortable now showing people my flaws. And at first, I look back at my life and I didn't know I was doing this, but I was kind of operating under the assumption that I've got to at least look like I have it all figured out, or look like I've got it all put together. And there's reasons for that we can go into at some point, but I didn't know I was doing it. And then when I realized I was doing it, it was a lot harder to break out of than I thought. And the thing for me, and I don't know that this is the thing that would break everybody free, but the thing for me is I had to really experience enough of God's acceptance of me. And then I had to, and I hate to sound like this because I don't want to sound all new agey and social media-ish, but at some level, I had to accept me.
Right.
And at first it became, yes, I had to fully get in it in my body that God accepted me, because I had it always mentally. But there's a big difference between what we know mentally and what we really know in our heart and our body. But once I got to that point where I'm like, you know what, if God thinks I'm pretty cool and I see enough in myself that I feel like I'm worthy no matter what I look like or sound like or what I can offer people, then you know what? I'm okay with my flaws, and therefore I'm going to just show people my flaws too. And then that became a positive reinforcement because people started immediately reciprocating and opening up. It was like I was giving water to somebody in the desert. When I would just show one of my flaws, they almost sometimes they wanted to like hug me because they were just waiting on somebody to go first. And so, I'm sure everybody else is going to have a different path to that, but that was mine.
Yeah, I think there's an authenticity to your message that resonates with people. I know as a friend, as you and I have grown in our friendship, that's always been something I've appreciated. One of the other things I really appreciate is the way that you wrote this book. It's interlaced with a whole bunch of stories, and you have obviously changed the names to protect the innocent and the guilty.
That's right.
And you start the book off with this story about this guy named Wes. And Wes, in your office, two things: one, why did you write that story about me? And two, would you tell everyone about it?
I was hoping you wouldn't read that. I was hoping you'd skip to some other chapter. Wes, quote unquote, Wes is the combination of probably 4 or 5 different guys. He's probably he's the prototype of a lot of young men that come to meet with me, and frankly, a lot of men at any age.
Yeah.
Where on the surface, dude had it all figured out, so to speak. He had everything that you would think is supposed to make somebody happy. As a college student, he had a girlfriend, he had good grades, he was on the track to get a good job, he had a friend group he liked. I mean, what's the problem, But he still came in like, I've got something going on here. I can't pinpoint it. My girlfriend's mad at me and I don't know why. There's just on the surface for so many of us guys, we think if we just check the boxes that we should do fine and feel fine. And then when that doesn't work, we're not just confused, we're lost, we're bewildered. So I wanted to start there because on the outside, he just didn't have any glaring issues that you would think, well, that guy needs to go to therapy. But if you start digging a little bit, then we all have those issues, and he's just a representation of that.
When you see those guys that come in who just are in there and they're not exactly sure why, they know that something's a little off. Mm-hmm. I think that there are a lot of leaders who could resonate with that. They know that they need a little bit of help. They're not sure how to get started with it. They're not sure how even to uncover it. And honestly, this was true for me, 12 years ago when I started counseling. You're not even sure where to start.
Yeah.
And so imagine that you're sitting across from a type A leader and he or she is like, Trey, there's something I can feel it deep inside of my bones.
Yeah.
How do you tell people to get started on this road to being tough enough to actually be honest?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I almost always start with two questions. Number one, what are you doing to distract yourself? And then we go down that path. I care less about what are you doing to distract yourself. I just start there, so it's not super deep. But the next level I go down is like, what are you distracting yourself from? So that's category one. But then I quickly move to, what do you desire? Like, what do you dream about? If you can clear your desk of all the to-do list, what's deep down in there that you really want? I think a lot of times, especially in the church world, we try to throw away our desire just because a lot of times our desires can get twisted and lead us down to some self-destructive paths. But if we can get to the pure version of our desires, I believe they're from God and they can actually be really helpful and then be our North Star. So the reason I ask those two questions are, number one, if I'm distracting myself away from some sort of thought or emotion, that thought or emotion is going to break through whatever it is that I've used to suppress it at some point. So most likely somebody's discomfort has something to do with something they're trying to push down. And then number two, if they have a desire that either they haven't put words to, or maybe that they've given up on, either consciously or subconsciously, that means a part of you is dead. Even if a part of you is dead, you don't feel right. You can tell there's something incomplete or empty in there. So those are the two paths. And then from there, it can go all kind of different directions. That's where it's really getting fun.
Yeah. One of the things that you said in there that I want to drill down on is this idea about pure desire, right? And I think a lot of us struggle with purity because I feel so impure most days. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious from your own life, what's your pure desire? Like when you talk about that as you do self-reflection, like what's that look like for Trey?
I often kind of beat myself up over this in moments where I get carried away because I still wonder on days, should I be like this? But one of my strong desires is I want adrenaline. Like if I could build a roller coaster in my backyard right now, I would do it because I want that so bad. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't at least think about doing some sort of adrenaline rush activity, or at least try to create some situation that's gonna cause some adrenaline. Sometimes that leads to some pretty intense conversations that didn't need to happen. But I think that is from God, at least in its purest form. And so I lean into that and I think, okay, well, it can't be just physical. Physical right. is obviously one outflow of that need for that adrenaline. But I think for me, at least, I want the challenge. I want the huge mountain in front of me that, like, not only do I have to climb it, but then I've got to hang off the edge of it just to see what it's going to feel like. So I think metaphorically, I want to think that I'm built for those kind of moments that maybe other people that have different wirings might back away from. And I don't know, maybe I'm flattering myself on that, but that's at least where my mind goes first.
I do think that there's a certain kind of guy that's just, and gal, who are kind of prone to like, how do I push myself that little bit more? How do I, in the book, you use a term that I really liked called rugged counseling. Mm-hmm. where you kind of force that idea of like, I'm going to push myself to being quiet on an extended walk, on this strenuous activity. How do you kind of, how do you recommend people lean into the idea of rugged counseling?
Yeah. So the reason I call it that, and the reason that's what I use on my social media handles, is because I came from the coaching world. And I don't mean corporate coaching. I mean like athletic coaching. So sure. I've always talked like a coach. I talk a little bit louder than most people. I say it a little bit more bluntly than most people. And that's just kind of been my way of getting points across. It's just a little bit on the rugged side. And then you look at the therapy world and it's mostly women in the therapy world that are actual therapists. And then the guys who are therapists, a lot of times they're known for maybe a little softer tone and maybe kind of talking around the point a little bit sometimes, not everybody. But because of my background, I just come right at it, and I'm not for everybody because of that. But I found that it kind of speeds up the process if somebody's willing to let's just go right to the root of it and let's deal with this. And I think when you flip it over, trying to challenge other people to do that, our biggest fear a lot of times in the change process is what we know is somewhere at the root, or at least near the root. And so if somebody's trying to change, their initial instinct is, well, let me try to change my behavior here and there and make a few adjustments. That way it doesn't really reflect on me as a person, or I don't really have to change at an identity level because it's safer. If I can just change some habits, then, it's great. That's why so many of the habit content, or so much of the habit content on social media is so big, is because, well, if I can just change the external stuff, then good. And I don't have to actually deal with me. I think especially when I go into a therapist's office, when I'm the client, I'm like, I'm going to have to actually change me. I can't just change my freaking habits.
I'm always like, why does it always come back to me? What's wrong? When can it be my wife's fault?
Exactly. So that's what I tell people is I just say, look, we can take all the time you want, and we can circle around the runway for as long as you want and figure out like how a plan might look, or we can set a target and go right after it, and you'll save time and money, and you'll all the different benefits. So that's really what I've found works best, at least for the people that sort of come into my sphere.
You're talking to a lot of type A driven leaders, male and female. Here's a question. Where is the line on discomfort? Like, how much discomfort should we be trying to put into my life? I get up in the morning, I work out, I do the sauna. There was a season where I was cold plunging a lot more than I am now, right? Like, what's the line on discomfort versus just masochism?
Yeah. Masochism is a pretty common one. I mean, there's at least two ways that I see sometimes the discomfort thing that goes awry. And one of them is the masochism where for some reason, they're punishing themselves for a multitude of reasons, maybe past regrets or something. But more often than not, when the discomfort goes awry, it's when somebody is basically using that in order to get respect, especially their own respect. Because sometimes the stuff at work, you can't control that and you feel like a failure. And a lot of times at home, stuff usually ain't going to go the way you think it is. And it is often, at least seems to be your fault. And so you don't feel respected there. And so the quest for discomfort becomes the place where you can almost guarantee that you're going to feel like a success, or at least feel like you are dictating things into enough of a high enough level where you feel like, okay, I can respect what I just did. So not that those are bad. I think that can be like a spare tire to help somebody get to the point where they can aim that desire for discomfort at maybe more essential things. But if they get stuck there, if it just keeps on becoming this game of like, how much discomfort can I put myself through? It's usually some sort of coping mechanism in my experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's a fine line when you need discomfort versus want discomfort. I think is probably the biggest switch. When I'm in a place where I need to do something, I'm already in an unhealthy relationship with it.
Yeah, often true. Often true.
I'm one of the things that I appreciate about the way that you wrote the book is you have these call outs and these tips at the end. And so it's really designed. You don't have to be like a ferocious reader in order to tackle a lot of the material in the book. It's written at a very consumable level. Talk to me about the artistic process of creating those call outs, of creating the tips, and what kind of prompted all that when you put it together.
These tips at the end, I look at those as a lot of my social media videos, especially early on, because the ones that seem to resonate the most with people were the practical steps of here's what to do, or at least here are some signs of things to look for. And I know, at least with my personality, I am practical to a flaw. I would much rather talk about stuff I can take action on rather than talk about all the philosophical stuff, that abstract concepts and all that. There's a place for that. I'm just not wired for that so much. So I just tried to lean into like, what would I want to read? So I'm going to write that. And then in terms of which ones I chose I had two filters. Number one, which ones were the ones that I would say the most to a client in that situation that I just written about in the chapter. And then two, which ones would I say to a client that would also translate well to a page? There's some that are just that I say a lot to a client, but it's more of a tailored process that I would take them through. But on a page, you don't have that luxury. So I just tried to figure what do I say the most and which ones of those are going to work well on a page.
Yeah, I think that they make the reading a little bit more, for the eye at least, catching, right? I love going through it. I just, as I was preparing for our conversation today, I saw the one about boredom and distractions, and I was like, deny, just kept moving, right? Swipe, and like, as I was e-reading. And so like, it's good. Like it's convicting. And I began to think about your daily work. How much of your day is spent in counseling scenarios or meeting with people one-on-one?
Probably 50 to 60% of the day. Yeah.
So let's just say that's, we probably work an 8 to 10 hour day. So that's, 5 or 6 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And my next thought after that was like, man, you're carrying so many people's stuff. Mm-hmm. You're meeting with all of these people. There are a lot of leaders right now who are listening who struggle with going home and being present for the people in their lives there because they're carrying all the weight of their work. They kind of become the de facto counselor because they're the leader of an organization. How do we wrestle with empathy fatigue?
Goodness. That's another huge topic we would have to maybe even write a book together about. But I find the most help in little 60-second increments. So, for example, here's one I stole from John Eldridge. I take a stick from outside in the woods and I keep it right there on my desk. And if I find that I've got 60 seconds or heck, even 20 seconds of nobody up in my face, I pick up that stick and I just look at it and I kind of twiddle it around in my fingers, and mentally I'm outside in the woods and I'm getting a break. And I can at least imagine the being in nature and being in God's creation and all the benefits that come from that. And then if you want to geek out on the therapy side of things with the neuroscience, I'm literally doing mindfulness. Like I'm seeing, I'm hearing, I'm touching, everything is right there in the moment. It's not about the next conversation or whatever's going to happen at home. I just find instead of doing this huge life overhaul where like every morning I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Like, no, let's find little 30 or 60 second pockets just to recharge. Because again, like you and I know, if you don't have it, you can't give it. So if it's an empathy fatigue, then first and foremost, you got to figure out little ways of recharging. And nobody wants to hear you got to overhaul your whole schedule in order to be more empathetic. Like that's not going to happen. So let's just start small. And then if you get some benefit from the small stuff, you'll have enough reason to go maybe to the bigger stuff next.
I know a lot of people want to do this kind of practices or mindfulness and all of the different activities that you've mentioned and I talk about all the time, but oftentimes they strike out. Like it doesn't work. Like they're not consistent. They fail. How do we avoid self-judgment, right? Like it's one of those things that I know that I'm often my harshest critic. And I know that's true for a lot of leaders. How do we battle that inner critic in our voice, in our head saying, gosh, you failed again. You suck.
Yep. It's okay. So I had to learn this myself. And this is maybe the thing that it took me the longest to learn, even after I became a therapist. So like I had all the knowledge, I had all the book knowledge, but I still couldn't get this from my head to my heart or my body. I could not really grasp onto the fact that inner critic is not actually me. And the same thing goes with like, if I'm nervous about something or whatever the discomfort or the intrusive thought is, it took me so long to divorce myself from the fact that is not me. Because when I thought it was me, then I would beat myself up for having that thought. And then it was just a self-defeating cycle. But when I could finally get that moment of like, okay, that's not actually me because I'm made in the image of God and therefore God's spirit lives inside of me. And then even if you want to take it a secular route, like there is a part of me that is essentially good and pure and knows how to manage all the other parts inside of me. So I looked at the part, for example, like when you're beating yourself up, like that inner critic is just a little toddler that happens to live inside of me. And that toddler thinks that its job is to like keep me motivated and keep me in line so that like I don't mess up. because if he can keep me from messing up, then he feels like he's done his job. What he doesn't know is I don't need him to help me in that way. So if I can separate him from myself and realize it's just a part in there that thinks it's being helpful, then I can actually build this kind of connection with this part and help it to maybe reintegrate into a way that's like still helping me succeed, but doing it in a way where he's not just hitting me over the head with the inner criticism all the time. That's a very like brief overview of a type of therapy called IFS. If you've ever seen the movies Inside Out, those I hate to even compliment Disney, but with those two movies, they took 5 years of grad school from me and they shrank them down to an hour and a half movie. It's truly amazing what the actual truth about how our brains and emotions work and how they put them into a fictional kids movie. Like I remember I took my niece and nephews to the second one and they're all laughing at the little kids jokes that are going on in the movie. And at the very same time they're laughing, I'm over there covering my face because I'm crying because of the stuff that they're showing about trauma and the roots of it. And like, I'm like, I can't let them see them crying. It's going to ruin their moment, but it's a genius film. So if you're like me and you have that struggle of seeing these parts as though it's all me, then maybe look at that movie and it can at least help you move the needle to know it's not you ultimately.
Well, I love that you referenced that because you talk about the movie Inside Out 2 in the chapter in your book on anxiety, right? And the anxiety assassin for me is one of those fascinating topics. I love the way that you wrote it. But in the book, you write this: the movie Inside Out 2 illustrates this dynamic well, depicting what happens when anxiety takes over control of the board in Riley's head and leads to a panic attack. You continue, but when anxiety is off to the side, not in full control, but mixing with the other emotions, she's helpful, providing a balancing blend of planning and worrying. Anxiety is convinced it's helping us. Yep. It knows it's making us uncomfortable, even as we hope it will protect us. Talk to us about the anxiety assassin. I think this is a beautiful concept.
Yeah, this one came from hard-won fighting with my own anxiety. And not that I have this thing fully ever whipped, but I think that whenever somebody struggles with what we would call the mental health world, I think generally it's a spectrum where some people are going to fall more toward anxiety and some people are going to fall more toward depression. I happen to be more toward the anxiety realm. And so
same.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, and that's probably a lot of the people watching and listening too, because we tend to be the types that want to get things done, and anxiety can often be a fuel for getting things done. So yeah, it's what I found though is while it can be a friend, if it really does take over and start running the switchboard or driving the bus or whatever metaphor you want to use, those are the moments where you can really get almost shut down. There have been 3 distinct times in my life where I can remember being like, okay, if something doesn't change, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do because I can't live like this. It's just the constant level of really intense physical sensations that come with anxiety. So I knew I had to get to the bottom of it because even the stuff that I learned in grad school and from other books wasn't working. So I kind of had to come up with my own system, and that's what Anxiety Assassin is. But the gist of it is, you got to make friends with it. You got to see it as an asset, and you also got to see it as an asset that can get a really flawed strategy of how to accomplish the goal. Because if you can see it that it's trying to help you, it's working on your side, it's just using a system or a tool that's ineffective, then you can actually deal with it. But I used to see anxiety as a really scary thing. Yeah. And so when I would feel some sort of sensation, I'd be like, oh crap. And then when I had that crap thought, then the anxiety got worse because it thought some other threat was happening. So it's really just a dumb part that can be helpful when used in the right way.
Yeah, I love the idea from this chapter about just putting it into the box that it belongs, right? A helpful box. And at the end, you quote a movie, one of my favorite movies, which is the Spider-Man movie. You talk about how Tony Stark gives him a suit and then takes it away. And he says, this is all I have. I'm nothing without the suit. And Tony's response is, if you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it. Yes. And I think when anxiety is everything, then you know you're like, and that's the balance in it. And again, you offer some really practical tips about breathing. And also in the chapter, you talk about the importance of community in the midst of all of that and finding help. And those are things that I know you and I are both super passionate about, is making sure that men don't walk alone. Yep. And so I kind of want to lean into that just a little bit and ask the question, if there's a guy listening right now, or even a gal that's listening, that feels like they don't have community, what's the first step? What are some of the ways and plans that you can kind of get to? And I'm not talking about like surface level, have coffee together community. I'm talking about like the real stuff where you can talk about anxiety.
Yeah. You mean everybody doesn't want to just talk about their deep, dark secrets all the time? This is news to me.
They do when they hang out with us.
That's right. That's right. Man, there's so many options. You know, to me, this is the easiest thing. It's, I guess, maybe not easy in terms of there's no fear attached to it, but it is not complicated to find community. It can be scary, but if you have a big enough reason to do something, then that dwarfs the fear. So I think before you start trying to take steps toward community, get a really clear vision and reason for why you want that community. Because when you do rub up against that fear of, I don't know if I want to say this, or I don't know if I want to ask this, then you'll probably give into that fear if you don't really have that clear vision of why. So I'll start there and I'll pause there. What do you think of that before we go into the practical?
I think understanding, Simon Sinek wrote that book, Start With Why. I think it's a phenomenal talk. If, that inner motivation is so crucial to so many decisions on why we put ourselves out there in kind of a way. For me, I often, and this may sound a little unhealthy, but I often need to make it seem like it's like life or death. I'm an extremist when it comes to what I might gain or lose. And that has its advantages and disadvantages. But like when I think about working out, I don't think like, hey, if I don't work out, I'm going to be a terrible person. I think, well, I won't be there for my daughter to walk her down the aisle. Yeah. So now in my head, I've equated working out with walking down the aisle. And in the same way, I equate having community with it keeps me off of drugs, right? Yeah. Off of porn, off of alcohol, off of those things because I have an addictive personality. So I love to consume, right? And people prevent me from over consuming me to death.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So you've already figured it out for your version.
Well, I mean, it's kind of twisted, but yes, I've been in long-term therapy, right? Like this is the deal. Like I've had a counselor for over a decade, and we get into it.
Yeah. And at some points we do need something pretty twisted or maybe extreme to get us going. Whatever those areas where we're the most resistant is, we got to bring something equally strong. So I love that. And I would say as far as a reason for somebody to want to belong to a community of some sort. Yeah, all those things you talked about, whether it's a substance or pornography or whatever. And also, if we can visualize the fact that like for a married man, if your wife is the only person who really knows you, you are essentially loading 1,000-pound a barbell on her shoulders. And she might be able to withstand that for a while, but eventually she can't handle all your weight. She's going to collapse. Right. And her collapse might look a little different from wife to wife, but that's not fair for you to put that on her. So a lot of times a little healthy guilt can be effective for men. Don't put all your emotions on one person, being your wife.
So good. So good. I know that people are going to love this book. Is there anything that I should have asked you about this book that I didn't yet?
No, Tony, you are the most prepared podcast host I've still ever been around. So it's phenomenal what you're able to bring to the table. So you're
far too kind. Where can people sign up to learn more about you? Where can they get connected? Where are you putting stuff out on the internet? If you were ever going to do a weekend getaway retreat with another podcaster named Tony, where would they get on your email list to learn about that?
That's right. My good friend Tony and I don't know if you've met him yet, but we're gonna be planning one for the fall. And so right now, the easiest place to find me is toughenoughbook.com. You can get all the stuff you need there. There's links to the socials there. So I don't want to overcomplicate it. Toughenoughbook.com is the easiest place.
That's right. And hey, Trey and I are really talking about doing a retreat. And if you're interested in that, if you'd want to get away, this would be a guys retreat. If you want to get away with us in the fall, do us a favor. Let us know. Like it makes it a lot easier to know that we'd have people who might be interested. We'd love to. This will kind of be the first time that we've ever kind of leaned into this idea. And we're just kind of exploring it together, really as an excuse for the two of us to hang out. Exactly. And we want to bring you along for the ride. So if you're interested, sign up for his email list, toughenoughbook.com, or mine at twmilt.com. We'd love to make sure you have all the details. So, all right, Trey, last question I'm asking people this year is a little different than the advice question I asked you last year when you came on. This year, I'm interested in hearing about great leaders. And so I'm curious, throughout your life, who is the best leader that you've ever met in person? It's got to be a leader that you actually had an encounter with. A lot of people wanted to say Jesus. Somebody on the podcast recently said Judas. Very interesting dynamics there. But so I'm narrowing the question down. Who's the best leader that you know?
Okay. At some point, you and I are going to have to talk about how that person defended how Judas would be a great leader, but we'll see.
Well, she's that podcast actually comes out next week at the end of the episode. It's good. She did a good job.
Okay. The best leader, I'm going to say, man, so I've had the fortune to be around a lot of really good ones, so it's hard for me to narrow it down, but I'm going to say my grandfather. He, without going into a ton of depth, because it's a fascinating story, but he was the son of immigrants. He had at least 7, maybe 8 siblings, and he took it upon himself to start a business that later employed all of his siblings and taught himself a skill of home building houses that he had no idea about before. He just learned how to do it on the fly and just built something from scratch that provided not just for his siblings, but even now into my generation now, we're still benefiting from what he did. But he did it with high character and just really made an impact on people that went far beyond just the houses he was building.
It's amazing. Amazing. What's his name?
His name is Hank Bashara.
Love
Henry
it.
Bashara. Yeah.
Henry Bashara. Well, Trey, as always, it is an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm so thankful for the way God continues to bring us together. And I'm praying for this book, that it gets in the hands of lots of guys who want to be more kingdom-minded, who want to be more driven, who want to be tough enough. And I'm praying for you and praying for the work.
Thank you, Tony. You're the man. Looking forward to more with you.
What a great conversation. I love the way that Trey talks about leadership development. I love the way he talks about self-care, empathy, fatigue, anxiety, all of those things that are a critical part of who we are. But if you're wrestling with this question, with this episode, and wondering what's the question that I should be wrestling with, let me give you the coaching question for today's episode. How well are you caring for yourself emotionally? And how might improving that care transform the way that you lead others? Let me say it again. How well are you caring for yourself emotionally? And how might improving that transform the way that you lead others? Friends, that's our episode for today. As always, forever thankful for you, the bold ones. If there's anything I can do for you, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find. At TWMilt on Instagram or Tony at twmilt.com. If you want to send an email. Thankful for you guys as we head into another month of podcasting and wrestling with this year's questions. So until next time, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.